like they have in New York City.
Yeah, and Broad Street, I mean, right now is a disaster anyways, so.
I saw a lot of traffic in,
the potholes.
The alleviation of the traffic injection itself, I think is a major thing. What were you saying?
But the potholes and stuff that are on Broad Street, I mean, I just obviously came from Starbucks, so coming down, it's just one after another, and you're swerving, and then they patch it and comes back up, and there's a huge one right in front of where the United Way was. That just.
I'll give you an idea. Where I come from is the mall. I hit the Broad Parkway. I went downtown, anywhere downtown within 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Took them up here, and you're here on Bridge Street, right? But when they're building all these new apartments right across the street, okay? You see these traffic lights. It takes 10 minutes to get past the traffic light in Amherst Street and Broad Street.
Yep. It took me 15 minutes to get from Starbucks to here the other night, and he's like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm sitting in traffic.
That's my point.
Like, I can't move anywhere."
Now, commuter rail does not fix that problem necessarily. Commuter rail does get you from one point to another. Even when you get to the final point, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
Then you got to deal with the bells and the horns blowing all the time, don't you? When they pull in, don't they blow their horns?
No.
They do it here anyways. We get the train that comes through twice a day.
That's gonna get the trains, yeah.
No, they fall off the tracks. Up here, we got this intersection here on Main Street next to Bridge Street.
Yeah.
Oops. Every so often you see the rail derail. Rail.
All right, so my second question to you is, it's one of the hottest topics here in Nashua is the Performing Arts Center that is being proposed.
Yep.
Fred, what's your take on that?
I've done quite a bit of study on that.
Oh, here's the study.
Well, the bottom line is they're in deep trouble with the budget. What basically happened is you had the Duncan Webb, and nothing against Duncan Webb, arts type of guy, and he comes up and says you need a 550-seat theater, and they build on the second floor of a building. And when I came along, how can you put a theater on the second floor of a building? How do you get people out of the theater? And I said, well, don't worry about it. You won't get a permit until it's safe to get out. Well, you know what it takes to get out of a theater on the second floor? There's 1,000 people. 4 huge columns in each corner. They can rapidly escape people. By the time you put these 4 big columns in each of the 4 corners, there's no room left for performing arts.
Fred, if I can interrupt you for 1 second. We as a matter of fact, Pat Taylor wants me to elaborate on that question a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a 2-part question. The 2 questions are you opposed on the Performing Arts Center itself, and are you just in the opposition of the location itself? So there's 2 parts there.
Right. I like performing arts. I think we need performing arts. I think it's something that now is attractive to lots of people. It gives them a venue for many things, musicals, live theater, and they're now talking about symphony, these jam, it's not my generation. We stand and wave with the music and all that. And they pack 1,000 people together, okay? That's fine.
Like pentatonics and.
My problem has always been, first of all, we have Court Street, the Court Street area across the library. That's really our cultural center. And the initial study by Duncan Webb was to put it there. And then the downtown people came in who got paid by parking fees to form this, they got $100,000 a year to push for downtown stuff. And they started getting into this and they said, we want this stuff downtown. Downtown. And well, where do you put it down? Well, we got this place called, the building that formerly contained Alex shoe stores, that building. So they went out and said, that's the place to put it. And by the way, when all the retail in there, so it's sticking on the second floor. So the location is wrong. The buildings are old. In fact, there's 2 buildings. They're different construction. The retail part of what used to be called Alex Shoe Store is built in 1960. There's a 4-story building behind it. It was built in 1905. They want to raise the roof of the Alex Shoe Store to the level of the 4-story building. The operator wants to operate the thing, says 550 theaters. It's not adequate. You need a 750 theater venue. They're already $5 or $6 million over budget just with the 550-seat theater. Now they want to build a 750-seat theater. Now you're $10 million over budget. No parking. You know, you can park down the garage, 500 feet away, but how do you bring the props in?
Well,
How do you bring the props into a building for, a large venue?
no
How
truck
do you get handicap
access.
parking? Now, these are the kind of problems I have. Budget, location, the enormous amount of construction has to
What
happen.
about parking?
Well, it's meant- For people, it's okay if you can walk 500 feet.
Yeah.
That's okay. What about handicapped access? We have a law, because IDA, you have to have handicapped access. But the main problem is, how do you get the props in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I drive a truck for a living, and coming into Nashua is kind of like hairy itself, so.
Well, do you want to buy the truck down that little lane?
Yeah, no.
I mean, if you think about it, Mike, even obviously as us being DJs, we've seen, setups and, for concerts and all that. There's no way you're getting any of that stuff in there. There's nowhere to put a truck, to unload it, to get up,
they've
all
only
the
had-
band's equipment, all the stage props, all the, everything that they need. There's nowhere.
So there's only 2 locations that they've,
No. Initially, they studied several locations. We could have built a whole new building. They were going to put it in Court Street, and maybe look at some location downtown. And the Court Street was the preferred location by the Duncan Webb. And they have some meeting, I saw the minutes, and said, no, downtown people are now involved, and Court Street is out. And a new building is out, we want it in downtown. And the only building at that time for sale, large enough, was the Alex Shoe Store building. So they took an option on it, and they bought it for $2 million. $2 million. So, and the reason on the front of this, they had a professional organization called Fantasy Consulting do a study as part of the Duncan Webb study to see what it would cost. The 550-seat theater was estimated at $16.5 million. Construction, not the architectural, that's another $2 million, not the building, another $2 million, not the staging, another $1 million. Just the architecture, the construction of the building. 16.5. Well, when they did the bond, they estimated at 11.5 million. And I have not been able to trace, no matter how hard I've tried, bugging Mr. Cummings, the economic director, they come up with the number. How'd you drop $5 million off the budget? He won't come up with the number.
well,
So the $5 million under budget, well, over budget against the cost, what they budgeted, right off the gate, and then now the tail has to be upgraded by another 50%. Instead of 550 seating, it's going to now have 750 seating. So
Wow.
it's once seeing these things, once the train leaves the station, everybody's for it. You're kind of committed.
yeah.
So now they went out. They realized the referendum question had problems with it because it requires a $4 million charitable donation from people that just donate money.
Yeah.
Well, $4 million is a lot of money to raise. I know the Holocaust Memorial, how tough it is to raise money. $4 million is...
Who's the richest person in Nashua? Can we go knocking on his door?
No, they're not good. Nashua has some very rich people that live here. And not some rich companies like BAE and Fidelity. They will donate money.
Yeah.
But they have to be convinced it's a substantial development.
Yeah.
So they realized they didn't have an architect. They had these dreamscape people, like Duncan Webb, artistic people, but not real building type people. So they had to monitor, they had to go around the question before the voters referendum said, oh, that's really not a binding question. And they said, okay, we can hire an architect. So now they're paying $1 million for the architect, another $400,000 for what they call a construction manager to check the architect.
Yeah.
And that's a
Okay.
modification on what people voted on. And, whether it's sleazy or not, I didn't oppose it because you got to do it. You got to build, you can't just say, I'm going to build a nice theater, why don't you give me $1 million?
Yeah.
You got to have, substance. Even when I build a memorial to get private funding, I'm talking not millions, I'm talking about, $100 here, $500 there, $1,000, I'm in seventh heaven. We built an actual full-scale model, about as big as this table, that showed the Central Monument, to scale, about almost the size of this table. And I took it around and showed it to people. You have to show people more than just a dream. You have to show them substance for them to donate money. Otherwise, they wind up going to Palookaville. They wind up going nowhere. Thank you very much for your money. We decided not to build it.
There's another question coming in from Carol Bradley. Excuse me, Carol, I apologize. The question is okay, you're running for alderman, it's a 9-month seat, obviously, on the Board of Aldermen.
No.
How much can you get done in those 9 months?
Very little.
What do you expect?
Probably-
Let me extend the question a little bit more. What do you expect to get done? What do you think you'll be able to get done in those 9 months?
I am known as a taxpayer's watchdog. My forte is money, understanding the budget. I probably know the budget more than anyone on the Board of Aldermen at this point. I've been involved in this for many years. It takes a while to learn all that. The spending of money, I said earlier, the Aldermen approve funding.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't just stick your hand in the sky and say, well, that's okay. Pay the teachers, what they got, the last guy, $100 million a year. You just raise your hands in the air, and you have to understand all that stuff. My forte is being a watchdog, taking the time to study things, understanding things, and trying to make people aware of what things are all about. And I'm pretty good at that. That's why I've been able to accomplish things. Now, in a 9 months' time, with a very inexperienced Board of Aldermen, exceedingly inexperienced Board of Aldermen, you hope to convince them of a few things. Basically, you just attack, you're a watchdog for the taxpayers, and you have a little bit more voice than if you just walk in as a member of the public doing public comment. You have a lot more forum, a lot more ability to address issues.
In the 9 months that you're going to have, if you get elected, what is the number one go-to thing that you want to accomplish in that 9 months? Like this has to happen in the 9 months if I'm elected.
I have none. I expect to see a budget.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, the spending cap, we're in the Supreme Court. We can talk about that. So, Don just came out and said the spending cap is invalid. So my number one issue to point out is the spending cap was never declared invalid by the court. The court dismissed our case.
Mm-hmm.
But the spending cap is as valid as you and I sitting here. So for the mayor to say, and the state attorney to say it's invalid is an invalid statement. Okay? So if I were an alderman, I'm in a better position to influence the discussion on the budget.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I look is, to what extent have you violated the spending cap? To what extent do you go over the spending cap? And the mayor already said he's going to have a 3% tax increase. That automatically means he's exceeding the spending cap.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, that would be my number one priority. Performance Arts Center, are we overspending it? We have to spend the extra money? If we do have to extra spend the money, I think we do have to spend the extra money.
Mm-hmm.
I can actually become a proponent because I think I can make a case whether the money is adequately spent.
Yep.
Rather than just pie in the sky, stick the thing on the second floor and, and we'll do a Hail Mary, Ben Clement, we'll do the Hail Mary. That's what he said. Not putting words in his mouth. That's what he said. I did a Hail Mary pass. But you don't pass legislation involving millions of dollars of taxpayers' money with a Hail Mary pass.
Yeah.
That's not how you pass legislation. And then misrepresented the people that voted on it. By saying it's now non-binding. There's nothing
when is the
about
election?
non-binding on the question.
So the special municipal election is Tuesday, March 5th. And again, it's for a 9-month seat on the board. Now, I have a question for you. Regardless of what happens with the election, whether you're in or not, are you planning on running after that? If you're on the board, are you going to continue running? What's the future of Fred?
No. If I lose this election, like I said before, I didn't go, pre-announce, had a nomination committee, an executive committee. I didn't go to Mr. Pierce and say, let's form a committee of some kind. None of that. I was called to serve. If I lose, forget it. That's it. Now I'm getting older too. I'm no longer, you guys are like kids to me.
Now, to get off politics and town management and budgets and all that thing, what is the best thing, or what's Fred's favorite thing to do when he's not working? What do you love to do?
Let me take a step back here. Hold on 1 second. So, if you're just joining us, listening to the Common Sense New Hampshire show, we have Fred Teeboom here live in the studio. Our phone number is 603-217-5400. If you want to ask a question to Fred, please do so. We're going to now switch things a little bit because we saw the the candidate part of Fred Teeboom, but let's look at the lighter side of things. And I think that's a great question. So please ask that question again, and let's have a little fun with it.
When you had nothing on the agenda, the Fred agenda, what's the one thing Fred likes to do and is happy
I
doing
have
that?
a good question for answer to
Okay, what's that?
staying